When you are below the line, which is where fear places you, you are at the effect of the world. The world is happening to you. Often our response when we're below the line is to go into the drama triangle. And when we are in fear, we are definitely below the line. And then when you are above the line, they call it being a creator. When you go above the line and you're the creator, you see yourself as literally the creator of your own existence. The world is happening through you and by you. It's another way of sort of claiming personal responsibility, but it's also a much more interesting place to be where you realize, like, this is happening and how am I going to engage with it? How am I going to respond to it? What am I going to do here?
Okay, welcome to the podcast. Elise, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, such a treat. We've intersected over the years.
I know. Finally, collision,
four-dimensional space-time. And I want to probe the concept of creativity. And, you know, we're living in this moment where there's a tremendous amount of fear in our culture. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the interrelationship between fear and creativity, and whether that's oil and water or more peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to think through this with you because I'm trying to figure it out myself as a creative person. But when we're talking about creativity too, it's larger than being a writer or a podcaster. It's about what business are you creating? What are you baking? What are you doing in the world that's bringing something new or new to you? And I recently co-wrote a book with Phil Stutz, who people probably know from the Netflix documentary and from The Tools. And we did a book together called True and False Magic. But it's really Phil's philosophy. And he's a very deeply spiritual person, as am I. And so it was fun to do that bit of work with him because The Tools, I think, in order to reach a wider audience, is a little bit stripped of the sacred. It's very practical. But Phil just wanted to go all out. And he would say that the antidote to evil is creativity. And that your part X, your shadow, your own sort of interior evil agent will do anything to keep you from creating. And so anyway, that line has been ricocheting in my mind for now a couple of years, and particularly in this moment that we find ourselves, that the antidote to evil isn't good. And a lot of my work is about goodness. It isn't even quote unquote light, it's creativity. And the piece that I wrote that you're mentioning on Substack is about fear and how paralyzing fear is for most of us, right? And a lot of us are in fear. I don't think it even matters where you are on the political spectrum. You might not be conscious of it, but most of us, because we're animals, are gripped by fear most of the time. And it's very contagious, it's very present. And when you are in fear, you cannot play and you cannot create. And so I think part of what we're being called to do at this moment in time is to attend to our fear, and so that we can create as the antidote to evil or whatever force would make us stop and constrict and get really small.
Yeah. I mean, we know with even the smallest degree of interoception, right, that our relationship to threat within our nervous system, you know, has certain signatures. So like accelerated heart rate and pupil dilation, but more psychologically kind of self-obsession and distrust and a certain closing down.
Yeah.
And, you know, we know that feeling, and that tends not to produce a lot of creativity. Because it's more, you know, we also know the opposite of that experience when we have really wide open aperture and we trust ourselves, we feel connected to the greater world.
Yeah.
That's where we tend to stream creativity more easily.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, we do have this biological wiring in relationship to threat. And so many of us feel threatened. But there is an aspect of also of like exposure therapy too. So and I think this was kind of the interesting thing as you began to unpack some of the Jungian philosophy here of using fear as a springboard in some ways, being able to actually face it and confront it as a diving board
Yeah.
for some creativity.
Yeah. I mean, it's like an essential part of the recipe, I think, right? Is to actually learn how to contend with the fear, to recognize it, acknowledge it, not suppress it. And often I think fear, as you mentioned, like it's how we keep ourselves safe. It's how we
Mhm.
keep ourselves alive. It's our deepest self-preservation instinct. And when we're in fear, we want certainty, we want control, we want approval. Um, and part of the creativity is saying, I don't know what's going to happen. I have to
Mhm.
embrace uncertainty. I have to embrace the unknown and step forward anyway. Um, and that's very difficult, but I think it's like kind of what it is to be human,
Mhm.
right? Is to learn how to overcome, not overcome, but like recognize the way that we're wired and say, I'm going to do something different, actually. I'm going to manage this fear. I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to, to use your work, I'm going to take this, what feels like very bad stress, and make it good stress, make it challenge stress, make it an opportunity to lean into life.
Yeah, there's the aspect of fear that can be very paralyzing
Yeah.
and can lead to numbness and disassociation. Then there's sort of like you can change the salience of fear kind of towards awe and respect and
Hmm.
not towards away from terror.
Yeah.
Um, uh, in the sense that like you can't really climb the mountain until you respect it and have a certain amount of awe for it.
Yeah.
And in that sense, there is like a little dollop of fear inside of anything that's courageous.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's funny because in the article it refers to kind of these like classic examples of creativity born out of like torture and misery, like Beethoven probably being
Yeah.
like the most archetypal example of that. And it also it got me thinking, and I wonder what it's like for you. Is creativity born out of joy, or is it born out of misery and torture?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. You know what I think is an interesting model for it too? I don't know. Are you familiar with Conscious Leadership Group? And do you know those guys?
Yeah.
Um, I've never interviewed them, but I read a lot of their work, and I work with a coach who is in that world. And so, what they would say, this concept of being above and below the line,
Hmm.
when you are below the line, which is where fear places you, and most of us spend most of our days, by the way, below the line, you are at the effect of the world. The world is happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And often our response when we're below the line is to go into the drama triangle. Who's the victim? Who's the villain? Who's the hero? We use that dynamic to sort of assess threat and be certain about the role that different people are playing. So that's below the line. And when we are in fear, we are definitely below the line. And then when you are above the line, they call it being a creator,
Mm.
which is interesting. And I'm trying to pull this together as we're talking. But when you are above the line, which maybe you can reach a couple times during the day, although once you become more conscious of it and even recognizing, oh my God, I'm below the line, in part because I'm in the drama triangle right now, blaming this person and that person for creating this situation. When you go above the line and you're the creator, you see yourself as literally the creator of your own existence. The world is happening through you and by you.
Mm.
And yeah, it's another way of sort of claiming personal responsibility, but it's also a much more interesting place to be, where you realize like this is happening and how am I going to engage with it? How am I going to respond to it? What am I going to do here that's like interesting? I have power. I have choice. I have autonomy to create. And so I think that maybe it is that challenge stress. Like maybe it is that moment where you come above the line and you say, okay, I see this. How do I respond? That is also what it means to sort of be in a different relationship to life.
Yeah. Well, in the Nietzschean sort of nihilistic world, creativity is often understood as life affirming
Yes.
and self-deterministic in some ways. So maybe that below the line is more of like the structuralist universe where essentially the culture shapes the self,
Yeah.
and above the line is an opportunity for actually the self to shape culture.
Yes.
And that is very life affirming,
Way more fun.
but hard. I
Yes.
mean, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
courage. Yeah.
And it's easy in our culture and very compelling to live below the line and be like, I don't have any power. All these things are happening to me. I don't have any control. I'm a victim, or that there's a victim. And I get it. And it fits. It feels like it fits a lot of life. But I think one of the main mechanisms to get out of fear is to say, okay, this is present, but I have to change my relationship to what's happening. What am I going to do? How am I going to respond? What can I make?
Yeah. And yeah, in the Jungian sense for creativity, I know this is your wheelhouse and not mine, but that what then emerges from this process of creativity, even though it's a reflection of kind of individual expressions, is this collective unconscious, this kind of set of recurring archetypes that we're trying to untangle and figure out as a species.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I love this idea of the collective consciousness, and it's a really good descriptor for when something emerges in culture simultaneously.
Right.
I'm sure that happens to you all the time when you recognize, oh, here's this person writing about this and this person across the world writing about these things simultaneously.
Totally. Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah.
I just interviewed this old British biologist named Rupert Sheldrake.
Oh, yes,
Do you know him?
of course.
So he's into morphic resonance.
Yes.
This is like you basically just described it, you know.
Yeah.
That this phenomenon that appears kind of among unrelated people across the world because there is that it's experiencing itself, that nature has some kind of vitalist emergence around an idea or a concept or a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is core to sort of Rick Rubin's work, for example, where it's like you might be visited with a vision and it's up to you to try to realize it as best you can. And most of our like realized visions are pale comparisons to sort of what we see in our mind.
Yeah, totally.
Which is why being creative sucks.
Well, you're trying to solve insoluble problems.
Yeah.
That's why the poets tend to commit suicide disproportionately. Because well, there's this concept in the Kabbalah called the emanations, and that there are, these godlike forms that, whether that's compassion or love, that fall from the heavens to earth and then shatter into a billion shards, and that creative process is reconstituting the shattered mind of God, whatever.
Is that Tikkun Olam? Like going out and finding the pieces and like bringing them back into the whole. Yeah.
And it's kind of kintsugi-ish, also in Japanese aesthetics. But this, but that idea of kind of remembering, and that, like you said, like in your mind's eye, there is this Godhead, right?
Yeah.
But then you express it and it's like a snail or something. It's like barely presentable.
Yeah. Well, no, exactly. And that's the pain, right?
Yeah.
It's the Jungians would call it sort of visiting the unconscious, or that world sort of beyond our awareness, and then trying to bring these things over the threshold into a conscious realization. And it's always a poor copy, you know? I mean, everyone who's taken an art class, which means everyone, right, knows what it's like to be imagining the finished piece and then technically really falling short.
Yeah.
Or writing. That's how that process is for me. It's like, I just can't nail it. I can never nail it, I have to be content with like, this is good enough.
Yeah. And then on your best days.
Yeah.
You get a little glimpse of it.
Yeah.
You kind of turn away from the shadow and towards the ideal form.
Well, I don't know if this happens for you too, but I always and this is a very Jungian idea, but they talk about sort of the enthusiasm, the etymology, which it means to be sort of inspired by theos, by God, not sort of like a Christian God, but just to feel animated by that, whatever is trying to come through you. And I write about this all the time, but I get sort of high on my own supply, right? And then you write and you're like, oh my God, oh, and then you come back and you read it a month later and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Or I don't believe anything that I wrote.
This is so confusing and obscured, and it's really hard.
Well, this points to creativity really being a process and not a product.
Yes.
Of course, we all produce these fossil records that then we have to deal with, like books and podcasts.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, for you, does your best work come out of a place of joy or a place of torture and frustration?
Oh, right. Thanks for coming back to that. I find when I am in flow, when I am really feeling connected, and I find it very joyful, like somewhat euphoric. And again, it's like that place of feeling high. And then sometimes there's despondency when I contend with what's actually on the page. And I find the editing process when I'm working on a book and going back and forth with my editor to be incredibly depressing and not fun at all. And all I wish for in my career and life is to just write what I want without concern for the audience and without an editor, and just to like let that be enough, because it's so torturous to work with what you've made and to have to face it.
Yeah, that gestation process is quite miserable. I mean, I think that the dispersal of your creative work into the world, I think, can be interesting, because the second that you press send or publish, it really ceases to be your book or your article. It's really everybody else's.
Yeah.
And they're going to see their own stories in it.
So interesting, though, thinking about it and like what I just said I longed for. And then I'd say on the flip side, I think about how iterative work is now, how fast we are. And there's a lot of beauty in that, just like writing a Substack in an hour and hitting send, or putting out a podcast and not overproducing it. I read a lot of books written in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I'm always somewhat often stunned by how complete and good and baked and important they feel compared to, I mean, similar to you, I read tons of books. It's like, this is not a book. This is like a shitty first draft, or this is an article, or, but I think we get away with that.
Yeah.
And what I say I long for is essentially to do that, and to not have an editor who holds me to account and makes me like grind and grind and grind until I have something a little bit more closer to being complete. I don't know I think it's amazing how much stuff we create now. And then I also wonder if maybe it wouldn't be good for us to have to refine it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I have a music background.
Yeah.
And I used to, watch these videos of, Ray Charles and his band, right? And they weren't doing it in post.
Yeah.
The amount of care and composing and orchestration that would go into a recording session, because they were recording with 2 mics. They had no ability to multi-track and then mix and fix it later, So just, the care with which things were created, where then, the background singers would need to take like 2 steps forward and then 2 steps backward. And when the trumpet player took a solo, he would take a step forward and then he'd move backwards. I mean, there was actually physical orientation in the recording. I mean, it was done with such precision. And we've certainly given that up for kind of speed and volume of content. I mean, who's to judge?
Yeah.
Only that sometimes the speed allows for mistakes that can sometimes be adaptive or better?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's
Yeah.
a really interesting question, I think, right?
It is. It is. We won't solve it here. I'm sure we'll make some mistakes, though. We'll see. It'll be someone else's decision whether or not that they should be selected for or not. So in terms of creative process, I've heard you describe your process kind of starting in in the more executive function side of your brain, which
Yeah.
you might consider your more masculine side of yourself. How does that work?
Yeah. So actually, I'm also curious to hear what you think these fundamental energies are. But a lot of my work, sort of in on our best behavior, and throughout, I'd say the last 5 years, has been trying to understand or discern masculine and feminine archetypal energy dissociated from gender.
Right.
And I'd probably get in trouble for saying this, but I think gender is maybe the least interesting thing about people. And I think what we do is we are taught, it's like how we're programmed or conditioned, particularly in a patriarchal culture, to say, you are male and therefore masculine, you are female, therefore feminine.
Right.
And then we're left with sort of half people in a way that doesn't actually make sense. So the way I understand energy and understand myself is that the masculine principle, sort of that divine archetypal principle, is structure, order, law, truth. And the divine feminine, archetypal feminine, is nurturance, care. So the more introverted, creativity, sort of that womb space. And I think to be a full person, you need a balance of both energies, and that they come out in different ways, particularly when you're in the creative process. So yeah, I have a lot of masculine energy in my life. I think most women do. If you're spending any time directing, organizing, structuring, you're in your masculine. And if you're in your feminine, you're sort of loving, you're creating, you're nurturing. I think probably as a dad, you're in your feminine a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm in a X chromosome household, right? So
Bathing in your feminine.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think when people understand that, they're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of relief. And I think when we look at our culture, there's an absence of feminine. Yes, there's an absence of women in leadership, but there's just an absence of feminine. And these men need to let their feminine come up as well, be much healthier for all of us.
Well, yeah, especially in the era of assholes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's not the job of women to carry the feminine exclusively and to come in and be female. It's on men to be like, actually, love, nurturance, and care is part of my core humanness. So when I'm in the creative process and I'm in my masculine, my process is I read a ton. I interview people on my podcast, which is primary research, right? Like if you listen to the Pulling the Thread, you probably know what I'm working on because it's following sort of my own curiosity, which hopefully aligns with the audience. But so I'm taking in all this material, and then I'm letting my, I guess, subconscious like do its thing. And then I'm structuring. I'm just like, when I'm working on a book, it's just structure, structure, structure. What's the formula of the chapter? What belongs here? What doesn't? I have this really intense note-taking process. And it's just all masculine while I'm gestating. Really, it is kind of like giving birth. And then I have this moment where it's like, I'm done. And then I'm just in my feminine and I am just like pouring it out on the page.
Right.
Like it's coming.
Yeah. And that's the, I think you equated it to going into labor, right? It's coming. There's nothing I'm going to do about it.
I can't stop it.
You can give me the Pitocin. It doesn't matter. Still going to come. Maybe faster, maybe not. Yes. But do you enjoy the structural part?
Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
See, I hate that part.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's just, it's just laborious for me. It's kind of like, what do you want for dinner? I'll pine over the menu forever, like, oh, I don't know, we've had chicken so many days this week, whatever, but then once we get to the cooking, I'm like, woohoo, here we go, I'm in flow. So the structural part for me is painstaking, but once I have that, it's just like easy. It's just flow state from there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think it might be that I'm really good at that. It's a
Yeah.
muscle that I've exercised for a
Math
long time.
counts.
Math counts. It's that math counts.
It's that math counts deal.
I can't, let's do some factorial problems.
No.
But that's interesting. I find I'm a little more terrified of my feminine, I think. I don't know. I don't know what that means. We need an analyst on here to tell us. But as much as I love being in the process, it scares me a little bit. I feel a little out of control and a little bit sort of like I can't direct this while
Yeah.
I'm doing it. So that's why I think I build such a strong structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we would probably collaborate really well then.
Yeah.
When you are in that flow process of basically filling the vase, do you? I'm curious. Do you ever like make yourself cry or make yourself laugh?
On command.
Not on command, but in response to something that you have written, you're like, oh my God, I'm crying now writing that. Or I'm making myself laugh. And is that a gauge of how tapped in or how good you know something
Oh,
is?
that's such an interesting question. I don't think I move myself to good tears. That's a really interesting question. I do sometimes make myself laugh, and I try to inject. I'm not a comedian, but I try and inject a little bit of humor
You're a little bit of a comedian.
You think so?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do try and make myself laugh because I think even that's like a safety reaction for the reader to be like, we can laugh at her. Like, let's look at what we're up to
Mhm.
and laugh, not in like a judgy way, but in a like, we're all sort of working on this project together. So let's like laugh. And I try to make fun of myself.
Mhm.
Not necessarily, I try to watch my instinct to self-deprecate, but I'm not that good at stopping that. But to just actually look at my own ridiculousness and humanness
Yeah.
and say, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I write about my girls a lot.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I will land on a line, or it'll actually just stream through me. That's another question that I'm going to cubbyhole for a second, whether or not we actually are the source of creativity or a conduit for it.
Mhm.
But however it gets there on the page, sometimes the words and the sentiment of the words will make me cry.
Oh,
And that's generally when I know it's good. So it's that's kind of my gauge, and where I know that I'm not just phoning something in, that I'm truly connected to something. So on that question, I mean, and this is, you know, been kind of philosophically bounced back and forth. You know, there's a lot of like St. Augustine and medieval people used to think that essentially creativity was just, you know, you were a conduit for God, right? Or there were the vitalists that felt that, you know, creativity was its own evolutionary force, right? That you were just a tool, and creativity is actually just naturally part of the foundational intelligence of the universe. It's meant to continue to iterate. What do you think? I mean, do you think that you are the source of the creativity, or do you think you are the conduit for it?
It's a really interesting question. I think, and I want to answer it, but I first want to just say, I think it's really beautiful, like how in touch with your feelings you are, that you would want, I think men, particularly in our patriarchy, in the last chapter of On Our Best Behavior is about men and sadness. Men are so severed from their feelings because men are conditioned for power and women are conditioned for goodness, that I just want to say, I think that's really beautiful that that is for you what it means for something to be good and beautiful, that it's attached to feeling.
Thank you.
Yeah, we need more men doing that. So I think it's to your question though, I think it's a co-creation. I think we're all some sort of fragment, you know, to go to this idea of tikkun olam, living our life. I think we're all uniquely gifted and here to serve in a very specific way that's not necessarily discernible to us or even other people. And it only becomes clear as we get into this creative process and start making things with our lives. And that we each get some small part of the divine to carry and co-create with. So I think it's both. I think that when I am writing, I feel like I'm channeling often. And my husband would tell you that, I don't know if you do this, but I like to sit on the couch with him and annoy him while he watches TV, and
Yeah.
I sit and I type,
Right,
and I
totally.
will literally talk and type. It's like two different parts of my brain are online at the same time.
Wow.
Really
Yeah.
weird skill. And as I sit here and type,
Yeah.
but so in that ways, it does feel disconnected from me, but I
Mhm.
don't think that, but I think that every person, like if you think of the vertical as this alignment with the divine or the universe or unseen energy or whatever, however you understand that, which I think most people have some conception of it, whether it attaches to a religion or not. And then we're living our horizontal lives. I think what we're being asked is to like take this vertical and spill it into the horizontal in a way that is very specific to how we're structured and who we are. And it's going to look very different for you than it is for me, although maybe kind of similar actually. And that, so it's this co-creation. It's like listening, discerning, bringing, and it's using inspiration and discernment at the same time to form whatever it is in the world.
Yeah.
Is that too woo-woo? You're woo-woo.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Commune. Yeah. Yoga. My whole life. It's like the least woo-woo thing I've heard in months. No, yeah, you wrote this sentence. I emailed you about it because I was listening to your book, and I think it went like this. It was that boredom is the crucible of creativity.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that idea of like, and I asked myself the question, like, when's the last time I've been bored?
Yeah.
Had a really hard time actually answering that question, given the world that we live in, right? So, I mean, I think I made the comment, like, I can't even stand at the line at Ralph's, waiting for the cashier without like grabbing my phone and tapping into the world's repository of knowledge for something or other, right? Or checking, one of my 10, social media accounts. So, but I grew up super, quote unquote, bored.
Yeah.
I just grew up in a very simpler time, as did you, where, it gave me enough kind of space to kind of empty my cup such that I could fill it back up with new ideas and new crazy kooky projects.
Yeah.
And so, I wonder, like, how useful do you think being bored is for creativity?
I think it's essential. I mean, and I hadn't really made that connection until you emailed me about it. But I think our attention economy and the way that our world stage is dominated now by figures who are just grabbing headlines and sowing chaos and fear and dissent is, again, it's like part X. It's like in its own like evil. I'm not saying that in like it's the devil, but just that's part X in action, right? Like pulling us out of flow, pulling us out of ourselves, drawing our attention elsewhere. And I think it's one of the reasons it makes it, because I think most people, not everyone, and obviously we live in LA, but most of us are not actually in direct, we don't live in Tehran. We're not in Israel right now, right? Like we're not in the Ukraine. Most of us are not under direct threat, and yet we find ourselves activated. And so I think part of boredom is the crucible of creativity. And this is from not a saying from my mom, but this was my childhood too, is absolutely true. It goes back to that idea, like when you're scared, you can't play. When you're in a heightened fear response, you can't create. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to like practice boredom, emptiness, I mean, Zen mind, right? So many
Right.
people do it through meditation. It's why I think for a lot of people, they say that they meditate not to relax, but to be more creative.
Mm. Yeah.
And yeah, it's sad when I think about my childhood and how bored I was.
Yeah.
And I can't create that for my own kids.
Yeah. I mean, I would just wake up on a hot summer's day and go into the garage
Yeah.
and, and just kind of walk around the garage, like start opening things,
Right?
right?
Where did you
Until
grow up?
I grew up overseas and then eventually in Connecticut.
Okay.
That's kind of where a lot of my memories are. And we had, just like a nice, modest house, but we had a lot of like spacious land
Mhm.
around it, and that was like provided for endless exploration of weird things. And I was also I love sports, so I was like turning my house, the grounds of my house, into like a golf course or
Yeah.
something like that, where I'd take a Campbell's soup can and like bury it in the grass and like take a stick and whittle it down and an old t-shirt, make a little flag, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
like just these kinds of things that would be sort of endlessly consuming but super creative.
Yeah.
And I think that planted the seeds for a very creative life. And I worry about that with my girls who are endlessly, plugged in. Their cups are always full.
Yeah.
They tend to be very creative anyways, but they're certainly not bored.
No.
Yeah.
No. And yeah, and in some ways I was interviewing, he's an he's at Stanford, not Andrew Huberman, but anyway, I'll think of his name. But he was saying like that there's an upshot to what's happening, which is that in terms of when you think about neuroplasticity and you were at the dinner table and like
Eagleman.
Eagleman. Yes.
Isn't that funny? So that was just actually a perfect example of how when you try to focus the spotlight of your attention on something, you
Yeah.
can't think of it
Yes.
often.
Yeah.
But the second that you give yourself some open space,
That was amazing.
it just like pops into consciousness,
Yeah.
which is why we need to be more bored.
Bored.
Right?
100%.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Go.
So anyway, so
Yeah.
he says that essentially that, when you are at a dining room table and you ask a question, when we were young, we had like an old Britannica set,
Yeah.
but mostly it was, I don't know. And that the
Right.
wiring stopped, but now you can figure out these things out. And so his point was that there is some upside for children with technology,
Mhm.
that their curiosity continues to be inspired and provoked.
Yeah, I mean, it's so useful. I was listening to some interview that you did, and I was like, anima and animus, I can't
Yeah.
remember which, and then I'm like, oh, well, there's the answer right there. Great. Now I can move on knowing what those terms are again,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, exactly. The inner feminine and the inner masculine.
yes.
No, but I do think, and I don't know the antidote. Living in LA, I mean, I'm from Montana and we're going there next week and my kids are so happy there. And yet I can't imagine relocating, but I think
Mhm.
about it all the time,
Yeah.
so that I grew up outside of the ambition of the cable company and we didn't have cable TV, and it's really hard to create that again, right? I had typing games on the computer and
Yeah. Well,
a lot of
my
wilderness.
girls are visiting their kooky hippie grandma right now. And there's no internet up there. It's up in Sebastopol.
Oh, amazing.
And yeah, they're just like running around, pooping in holes and stuff,
Yeah.
you know,
No, it's amazing.
and other things,
Yeah.
not just pooping in holes, but you know what I mean? They're just like totally there.
Yes.
And I think that that's the thing about creativity is that it offers the opportunity to inhabit the present moment.
Hmm.
And we all know that feeling when we're completely immersed and we lose track of linear time.
Yeah.
And it really is the signature of what happiness is. I mean, you can't really be happy in the future.
Yeah.
You can really only be happy in the ever now. And that act of immersive creativity is one of the keys in the door of the present moment, of actually inhabiting the now.
Yeah. Interesting. It's why I like the word joy more than happy too, because I feel
Yeah.
like happy is,
True.
yeah, sold to us as this like ongoing state, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll just hit a point and then you're done, you're good, you're happy. Whereas joy is so ephemeral, right? Like, and
Yeah.
you can't contain it, you can't control it, and you can't really inspire it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, happiness, it's generally framed as something that's just over there.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
always a chasm between you and it.
Yeah.
And then, you get into this self-dialogue of like, well, if only and only if I can then get that thing, well, then I will achieve that perma state
Yeah.
of happiness. But we know, like, the second we cut the ribbon off that box, there's another glittering
Yeah.
object on the horizon.
Yeah.
And so
Or
it's
like there's some fresh
Yeah.
hell to interrupt
Yeah.
your like whatever's happening, which is
Mhm.
also, I think, life, right?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Boy, well, that old thing. Do you have other creative outlets? I mean, writing being your primary one.
Yeah. Really, I mean, between podcast writing, I needlepoint. I don't know how creative it is because it's so contained to,
Really?
yeah, I need to actually
It-
bust that out.
Is that on public display anywhere?
I'm just waiting for my solo show.
We should talk.
I know. No, it is not on display, and they take so long
Mm.
because I try and needlepoint photos. I just started doing it when I was a magazine editor, and I would be sitting on photo shoots bored.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
And I would just sit there and I would needlepoint, and it was fun. And it's like I find it doing things with my hands to be one of the best ways for me to meditate or get into that state.
Hmm.
I'm not good at sitting. I just can't. I know I could, but I can't. But I could. But I find I need to walk or I need to do something like needlepoint. Or the other week, I took my kids to the food bank in Santa Monica, and I built boxes in the alley for 2.5 hours. I completely lost track of time. I loved
Right.
it.
Well, I think that this is the other great on-ramp into joy, or that sense of, the absence of linear time and the absence of separation is through philanthropy and service
Yeah.
and collective enterprise, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, and to do something concrete,
Yeah.
to be given that's very appealing to be told we need you to build 250 boxes of fresh organic and set up they have it all organized, and yeah, just to sit there in the alley and like construct boxes and pass them off and have them be filled with vegetables. It was so it was a meditation and incredibly affirming and very fun, and my kids loved it.
And do you structure that kind of philanthropic work into your family life, or is it just
Not as much as I would like to.
Yeah.
And it was a good call to add that and to figure out like we need to do this. They do it on Tuesdays and Fridays. So like, what's our Friday? And we're going to just do this every month.
Yeah. I'm curious, as you were driving back home, what were your kids like in the car after doing that?
Oh, they were so excited. They had so much fun. And the man who ran the operation gave them mangoes, and they were like the thin skin mangoes that you can just sort of eat without. And so my oldest was so in heaven. It's like the best mango he'd ever had, apparently. And yeah, they loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had the same phenomenon when we do, like for Thanksgiving, we'll go down and do what's it called, gobble gobble gift or something, and then there's like a local church kind of down the hill in Hollywood, where my kids will do some food drives and things like that. And in the car coming back from those things, they are just different creatures.
Yeah.
They're not on their phones. They're totally present. There's just a spirit of enthusiasm, as you
Yeah.
say. What was that? Closeness to God or
Yeah.
something? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just that palpable feeling of excitement and enthusiasm in the car. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is, obviously there's many, many reasons to engage in philanthropic activity, but from a selfish perspective, I'm like, oh my God, it has such an
No, it's
impact on
so
my
deep.
kids. Yeah.
And I think to do it in a way where it's actually not about just writing a check, not about sort of like and those are obviously important, but like
Mhm.
a cognitive idea of philanthropy. When I was a kid, I went to this hippie alternative school in Missoula, Montana, and people would do like swimathons to raise money, and that always drove my mom crazy because she was like, "To what end?" Like,
Mhm.
my mom's that's just very much my mom. And so she devised this fundraiser at her school, which I would love to see. This is my pitch. To make this take off.
Okay.
It was called the Sussex Ecothon. And we would call around and, get $1 an hour uh, donations. And they took us all over the city, small town, and dropped us off. And we had a couple of adults with us, and we were in these packs, and we picked up trash for 6 hours. And we like beautified the whole city. I mean, we picked up a tremendous amount of garbage and raised money to go on our annual field trip. And I raised like $1,400. This is in sort of the 80s and the 90s. I was a very good fundraiser, but it was so fun. We all looked
Mhm.
forward to the ecothon. And I know we have beach cleanups and whatnot, but I do think we need, particularly in this moment, and churches and are really good at this, like
Yep.
structured volunteerism. And I think people, I just interviewed. Have you ever interviewed Rutger Bregman?
No.
He's
No.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And his new book is Moral Ambition.
Mm.
And it's all about sort of building these coalitions, these effective coalitions for change. And what actually a big part of his book is about looking at resistance movements and trying to understand what it is that makes like he talks about this part of the Netherlands during World War II where they saved 100 Jews. And one of the reasons that the Dutch were given sort of this title of being resistors to the Nazis, even though his point is like, it's not actually true. Like they really didn't resist except in these small pockets. And so when they looked at the research, there were these people who were researching at the time, I can't remember their names, but a husband and wife team looking for like, what is it that makes someone willing to harbor a Jew?
Mm-hmm.
And they could find nothing in their data. And then when they went back and looked at it, they realized there was this one man who sort of instigated the whole thing. And what he did is he asked people. And when people are asked, they were much more inclined to do it. And then what ended up happening is because everyone was harboring someone, they were all in it together and protective as a community. But it was really that, like, you just have to ask. People need to be asked. And then they invariably like become these resistance fighters, right? Or volunteers or whatever it is. It's kind of a beautiful, for me, it felt like an unlock of how good it feels to be asked and to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think culturally, if we saw created in the wake of what's happening, like what is it? I think no King's March, people were asked,
Right.
like, please show up. And they did. That there's something really important in that call and response and this feeling too of like, I need you to do this.
Right. And asked in a way that doesn't appear as hundreds of spam emails.
Not as like,
Right.
can you pitch in $5, $10, $25, $100? No, I think people don't want to be asked for money. They want to serve.
Right.
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 And or they want to feel like what they're doing makes actually there's like a trackable, meaningful difference. Do you remember, for example, I don't know if you've ever met Charles Best, but he started Donors Choose. Do you remember that organization? I think it might still exist, but it was so revolutionary because he was a public school teacher, and I think, he's a kid of privilege. He grew up in New York City and became a public school teacher ultimately, and then was like, this is crazy. Teachers are using their meager salaries to buy basic school supplies. And so he created this platform where teachers could go on and post for art supplies or number 2 pencils or tickets to the opera because they're, from all over the country, and make a direct ask, and then you could fund it directly. And it was so beautiful and meaningful, right?
Yeah.
To feel like, oh, I bought these kids, I bought 20 copies of this book so they can read this book.
Yeah.
And I think we need that level of direct impact because people are disconnected.
Yeah. Where you also feel that direct connection to your act, to your giving. I'm curious, what do you think actually stands between some people and their creativity? And I'll just color that question a little bit, where, that quote from Boredom, about boredom, came from, I think, the chapter that you wrote in your book related to sloth.
Yes.
Right? And so we're not really allowed to be bored in this culture because busyness and productivity is so celebrated. And so we don't often have the opportunity to kind of open the aperture of our attention, to get out of executive function and just, live in that kind of liminal space for a moment. So I think that's one thing, but then obviously there's probably a lot of fear of judgment associated, right?
I think it's that fear of judgment and just the creative disappointment of whatever you make not matching up to the ideal. It's once you're finished, you have to put it out into the world, and you could fail, and that's too terrifying of a prospect for people. So I think they stay in this sort of like static space. But then I think that point is really actually well said, that part of what happens in this busyness is it keeps us away from our existential anxiety. It keeps us away from like that unconsciousness, that despair where we would do something differently. And even thinking about, so on our best behavior structure around the 7 deadly sins, which I think are this punch card of goodness for women in particular, and sloth, and the way that they're distorted over time and passed down to us in this way that it shows up in modern culture.
Yeah, and I'll just say it was fascinating to trace the history of those things in the book anyhow. So,
no, thank you. No, it's wild. It's wild, actually. Like that the 7 deadly sins are not in the Bible. Most people are shocked to learn that. Yeah.
And there were 8.
Yeah, and there were 8.
And they were like,
the
we get rid of this one. Sorry.
Yeah, which I think is the one that's like lodged in the minds of men. But no, it's a fascinating history and the way that culture is created and then passed down to us, right? But sloth, the way that it was originally, the original concept of it isn't like you need to go and be busy all the time, the way that we have imbibed it now. It's really about apathy and spiritual apathy, in some ways laziness, but more spiritual laziness, which is this like, oh, I don't need to put myself forward. I don't need to be in motion. I don't need to create. And yeah, I think we distract ourselves with the minutia. I do this all the time. We all do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like I find a lot of things to do instead of the work that I'm supposed to do.
Oh my God, it'd be like, oh, I'll get to that, but this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's I find that I'm not actually. I've lost my fear of judgment.
You have.
Or I've largely overcome it, which was one of the biggest areas of self-improvement for myself. Because
How did you do that?
I did it through really building my psychological immune system. And, I've kind of made this parallel before, but, you build your physical immune system through low-grade exposure to pathogens, the bacteria and viruses, such that then you build up the defenses, the antibodies.
Yeah.
I think that's also can be true psychologically, where through, some exposure to low-grade insult
Yeah.
and recrimination, that you build up a certain immunity to it. And I actually started to flip the script on incoming opprobrium, of which there was plenty, and start to really look forward to it as sort of as an opportunity, not just to kind of test my own imperviousness, but also to connect and potentially grow.
Yeah.
So, so I actually have largely overcome the fear of judgment in terms of my own creative work.
Phil Stutz would be so proud of you. But that's, I think, part of the creative process is that it is a process. You're just moving, right? And
Yeah.
once you start creating a lot of stuff, it's not that it doesn't matter, but you're just like, this is one more iterative step forward for me. It's not the final summation, right? So as you make more, I think you get.
Yeah, you build atop your own shoulders on some level. I mean, I will go back and revisit things that I've written 3 or 4 years ago with a giant eye roll.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
You're brave to go back.
Yeah. Rarely do I. I mean, I don't know. Do you ever listen back to your podcast or go back and read your books?
I remember when I needed to read the audiobook for On Our Best Behavior, and it had been, that comes much closer to pub day, and I was filled with fear. And I was talking to the director of the audiobook as we were doing it, and she was saying like, oh yeah, it's always a crisis for people because they've had a certain amount of time away and then they come back and they're like, I don't like that, I felt good. Like as I read it, I was like, oh, this is good. I'm actually really feel good about this. But the more distance that I get from it, the more fear I have actually about going back and saying, would I still stand by this,
Yeah, it's interesting because I know you've ghostwritten a lot of things, right?
Yes, sir.
And so the judgment that we have on things that, well, I'll just say that you have on things that you've ghostwritten versus the things that appear under your name, it must be a very, very different experience,
Totally
right?
different
Because
experience.
you have no ego connection.
Zero ego.
Yeah,
It's
to the ghostwritten
really,
material.
It's a really interesting experience. And there's no emotion for me. It's not mine. I'm just structuring it for people doing what I, sort of like to do. But it is very interesting for them sometimes to read it and quote unquote meet themselves on the page. Very difficult for people because invariably they're like, I don't sound like that, or I would never say that. And I'm like, cue page 57 of the transcript. Like, let me read it back to you. We can change it, but often people have no real, most of us don't have any real awareness of how people experience us, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's like same with the creative. Like you have an intention about how you want to be received, but that's not going to match to someone else's reality, and you can't control the way they feel about you. But so when people, I think, are reading themselves, they're like, it's hard to get a clear vision on yourself.
Yeah. Totally. Is there any creative endeavor, like outside of writing, that you have a yearning for? Like, oh, I want to learn how to play guitar or whatever.
It's a really good question. It's funny. This makes my husband laugh because he went to RISD and he's like an incredible he's an incredible artist and technical artisan, like making
a graphic
things.
artist.
He went to school for architecture, but like he should have been an industrial designer, and he makes things and fixes everything he does is so perfect. I was a double major in college in English and art. Which is funny. And throughout that process, I was like, I'm not an artist. Don't worry, everyone. I am not confused. I'm never going to be a studio artist. But to me, it was therapy, painting, and my focus was on photography. But and I'm a terrible technical photographer. But I had good ideas, and but it was just for me like a form of therapy to go and make things. And when I was young, I used to take sewing classes and make my own clothes. And so I do sort of miss, and I think the needlepoint is part of it, crafting things. And I've gotten away from that. But every time I have, one of my youngest is a good art, like very interested in art and very quite skilled. And so sometimes I'll be like, let's draw our hands without looking at the paper and all of those fun
Right.
activities. And I'm like, I would like to go to like a life drawing class, or I think I should bring some of that. I think I'm a little intimidated by the company I keep though, because
Yeah, well, that's true. But
yeah,
it is liberating to immerse in some sort of creative endeavor that you have no ego attached to.
yes,
So for me, that was piano. I started monkeying around on the piano like in 2016 on some project of like what made America great in the first place. That's a whole other different story. But I wanted to learn the Great American Songbook basically. And so I just started plunking out, one song, one jazz standard per week. And it was awesome.
yeah,
And just the process of it, because I had no ego associated with it. I wasn't going to be a jazz pianist
yeah,
until then. About a year later, I built enough repertoire and someone said, oh, you can play those songs. Can I hire you to play at my gallery? And I was like, and I was like, okay. My friend had a show there and it was the opening and he went, I don't know. So I agreed. And the moment I said yes,
the
it was
joy
like
disappeared.
ego, fear, judgment, and all of a sudden, what had started as just pure sort of creativity and enjoyment, got layer caked with
Yeah.
the ego, and it was interesting. And then I went and did it, and it was fine.
Well, that's like the rub, right? By the way, I'm not good at piano, but I really have piano hands.
Yeah, look at you.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
It's so disappointing to my mother. I took lessons, but I just don't have it. But I think so often, and we obviously live in a culture that's obsessed with not only purpose, but sort of the commercialization or the monetization of like your gifts,
Right.
that I think it can really ruin that experience once it needs to be capitalized and commercialized and turned into a product.
Yeah.
But like often that's how we want to spend our time. But I think there's a difference, right? And I talk to a lot of younger people who are like, how do I figure out my purpose? I'm like, well, I hate that word. Like, let's talk about it as like ongoing iterative contributions, not one thing. Can you like even, I mean, you're a polymath, like you're all over the place. You've done tons of things.
Yeah.
What is your purpose, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't like purpose because
Yeah.
purpose for me represents something out there in the future that I will attain. And then once I attain that thing, like
Yeah.
everything, it will be, wine and roses. And I almost actually veer towards purposelessness.
Yeah.
And my girls are dancers,
Mm.
and I take them to these wretched, ghastly dance competitions. And yeah, their purpose when they show up is to win the plastic tchotchke trophy thing. But really, when they get on stage, this is what I remark about them, is that they're totally purposeless.
Yeah.
They're not like actually trying to get from one part of the stage to another part of the stage. They're not trying to finish the routine. They're actually just without purpose. They're just totally in flow, inhabiting that moment. And that is like the essence of creativity, is actually to be purposeless.
Yeah.
And so I try to inhabit those moments of creativity as process and not product
Yeah.
as much as I possibly can.
No, and it's so smart because when you think about even thinking about the word purpose, it like feels like an object, right? Like you're suddenly you're a tool in a toolbox, like
Yeah.
with a purpose rather than
Yeah, I mean, like, you
just
could imagine some curmudgeonly old grandfather being like, dance, there's no purpose in that.
right.
Or, art,
Yeah.
there's no future in that. He's like, yeah, there is no future in it. It's actually about being here now.
Yeah. About the dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think no, I agree. I think that's like a debilitating concern for people, particularly when they're trying to sort of quote unquote figure out what they're supposed to do with their lives.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I don't think obviously nobody can answer that question for you. And I think, I don't know if you feel this way, but I look back on my career and everything, of course, because we're good storytellers, I can look back and say, oh, this all makes sense. And I learned really interesting things at every job I had, but that I could never say, like, this is it. This is
Yeah.
it. And like, even now I'm constantly pushing and my work evolves and sort of the vehicle is somewhat the same, but I'm not stuck in one place doing one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel like a generalist,
Yeah,
um,
me too.
which
Let's say
is
polymath. That's how.
okay. Yeah, I liked polymath better. And I do have certain regrets that, like, I wasn't like a neuroscientist, or maybe not as fit like a gastroenterologist. I know everything about your gut and your colon. Not your colon per se, but but then I had like a publicist at one point, and I was bemoaning the fact that I was not an expert in anything, and she goes, "Oh, don't worry, honey, that makes you a thought leader."
Oh
She
God.
wasn't an old Jewish grandma either, but like that's how I heard it. She's like,
Yeah.
"No, don't worry, honey,"
It'd be a lot. I mean, I
Yeah.
struggle with this. Like, I don't think people know where to put my book in the bookstore. It's like,
Oh yeah.
what is this? And I'm confusing to a lot of people because I play in a lot of different, and I try and pull all these disparate things together and synthesize.
Yeah, have you ever walked around in Barnes and Nobles and be like, I know I have a book in here, I
Yeah.
swear to God.
Yes.
And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's, like behind the Pete's coffee
Yes,
or something.
100%. I mean, yeah, and I, of course, like every author, had the incredibly humbling experience on pub day of I was in New York and I did the Today Show and everything was going really well. I was like in the top 100 on Amazon. It was amazing. And I went to McNally Jackson. I spent most all of my extra money at McNally Jackson when I was a magazine editor living in New York. I was there probably every day. So I went to McNally Jackson and I was with my husband. And we were going to go and have dinner with some friends. And I was like, I just want to see my book in the wild.
Yeah.
And I went to the new releases table and there were people who were publishing my same week with stacks of 10 books. And
Yeah. And your immediate reaction is like ire at your publisher, right? Like, why didn't they buy the end cap or whatever?
Yeah.
And then,
no, well, so then I'm like wandering around. I go to I'm like, is it in women's studies, gender studies? Is it in history? Is it in wellness, mental health, psychology? So I'm like wandering around the store. And then finally I'm like, I just don't think it's there. And I go to the front and I'm like, I wrote this book. Do you happen to have any copies of Honor Best Behavior? And she's like, taps and she's like, oh my God, they must be in the back. We bought 3 copies. And or no, yeah, 3. And it might have been 2, Jeff. I don't know, but it was 2 or 3. And so she's like, I'll go get them. And we're standing there and 10 minutes later, I'm like, this is just so humiliating. And then we leave and my friend Ramon calls, who's a novelist. And he was like, I'm at McNally Jackson. They found your book. I bought one of the 2 copies. Anyway, I was like, this is, I need to be right sized. Like, as Richard Rohr says, like, pray for one humbling moment a day. Like, I pray for my daily humbling. So I got humbled. It is really sad though, when you're like, this is the most important thing I've ever done and nobody cares.
Yeah. I was asking I have a friend, this guy, Paul Hawken, who's if you know Paul, he's a wonderful old curmudgeon. And he had a new book on carbon, which is called Carbon, which is beautifully written. And I said, so how are you feeling about it? He's like, well, I'm not at all invested in its success. And I'm like, oh, really? He's like, no, but I'm utterly petrified of its failure.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that's honest.
Yeah.
And I think, for people who are publicly creative, That's how many of us feel. You
Yeah.
know, oftentimes we just want the opportunity to put ourselves through the same hell
The
again, right?
same hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a tough grind. I mean, book writing is rough. It's such an anemic business.
yeah. Do you think the nature of book writing and being an author will change in connection with AI?
I mean, there's like, I don't track AI that closely. It's one of those things I have my head in the sand about, I think.
Mhm.
I think that it will make it ever more important to have sort of like an original spin on whatever the material is that you're putting forward. And um, I think, yeah, if I were sort of like making my bread and butter, writing sort of like quick, fast romance novels or something, I'd probably be really concerned.
Mhm.
I think it will put a bit of a premium on really like thoughtful, like there's this James Baldwin quote, on which I will never be able to recall, but it's essentially about like how amazing, what AI, he's not talking about AI, but like that AI cannot deliver what it's like to sort of meet a writer on the page and recognize like, oh, we share a story.
Yeah.
And so I think the more conversation there is with other writers and thinkers in books, like that feels impossible for AI to capture. I don't know.
Yeah, the storytelling aspect of it is not particularly refined. It's good at obviously performing complex processes or distilling
Yeah.
ideas. You know, for me, I've been thinking more and more about whether books take on a live aspect to them.
Interesting.
And I've actually thought about this in connection with you. If you've thought about, okay, I need to take my one man show out on the road,
Yeah.
because more and more, well, I think people are craving in real life physical
Yes.
connection, but that because AI could essentially submit a manuscript on any topic within 45 seconds, that the idea of touching and feeling and seeing ideas in front of you will become more and more
Important.
important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that's if
Yeah.
you'd also do an absolutely fabulous one-person show. So I think you should just take it on the road.
Well, it's interesting. I wrote with my friend Courtney Smith, who's this incredible coach. She does
Hmm.
she coaches
Yeah,
within the conscious leadership group framework, the above and below the line.
and she's
Um,
with it in the new workbook, right?
yeah, we
She's
did
the
this
co-writer.
workbook together
Yeah.
where which goes with on our best behavior, but it's essentially this, I think there are 7 steps. It's this process where we help you identify the stories that are running your life and holding up your personality that have maybe gotten you really far,
Hmm.
but you aren't conscious that you're so committed to upholding the story.
Yeah.
And then what it looks like to actually identify the story, make it really big, like you give it a persona. So, one of my stories is, if I accept money from someone, they own me. Or my mom had this fear of becoming a bag lady, and that's very deeply entrenched in my own consciousness, that like I'll someday, if I'm not careful, if I'm not a careful steward, I'll be living out of my car.
Uh-huh.
She went on Donahue when I was a kid to talk about her, with Gloria Steinem, to talk about her fear of becoming a bag lady.
Really, it's so funny. My wife's mom has a dream of becoming a bag lady.
That's her goal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. She just wants to let go of everything and
everything.
just be a bag lady.
I love
Anyways,
it.
sorry.
But so
Yeah.
then so for me, that story of my mom's was really big in my own psyche. And so in this process, like, you give it a persona. So I have bag lady Bethy, and I have conversations with bag lady Bethy in those moments where I feel consumed by fear about like, I spent too much on dinner. Like it just
Right.
that's like the patterning for my mom.
Uh-huh.
You teach a class on it, which is really fun, to a bunch of co-eds at, a women's college, where it's like, this is how to make my story work for you. And you get you're like, oh, I am working really hard to keep this story alive in my life.
Right.
But so
And
that's good for in real life. It's very moving, actually.
oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
to excavate and identify that story, is there like kind of a psychosocial intake form, or
So
how
the
do you do it?
first step is, and it's structured according to the seven deadly sins. So it's the same process, but we do like, so for sloth, right? There's the process for sloth and identifying those stories. And then there are these shift moves for creating new stories. So one of my stories in sloth is I'm the only one who can do things right. So I should do them all. I think a
Mhm.
lot of us carry that story. And then
Yeah.
we like work really hard to make that story true by encouraging, learned helplessness in our partners. The first step of the process is this exercise called fact versus story. And it's actually very powerful. And it's this idea that a fact is something that can be captured on videotape. It's just a fact. A feeling can be a fact as long as there's no story. So I could say, I'm feeling excited. If I say I'm feeling excited because I'm really enjoying this conversation with Jeff, that's a story, right? I don't really know why I'm like feeling
Mhm.
excited. But a fact would be I'm sitting with Jeff having a podcast conversation. Now I could tell myself a lot of stories about that. And this is what we do, right?
Mhm.
And so the first exercise is to plainly state a fact about yourself and then generate, just like get going generating stories.
Hmm.
So in your daily life, my fact could be when my husband walked in the door, he didn't acknowledge me, right? Stories I could tell myself, and I've done this. He's mad at me. He is enraged about something. Something is really wrong. He we're gonna get divorced. Could be a story, but like when you do
Sure.
this process, you
Yeah.
realize like, wow, I'm really far. I've like created
Yeah.
a lot of stories,
Yeah.
and so that's the beginning. It's just take facts of your life, and say, here are all the stories I'm telling myself. And
Yeah.
then you'll be like, ooh, this story is like really alive for me.
Yeah. It's a little bit reminiscent of Byron Katie, of the
Yes,
work.
yes. Very,
Yeah.
very like inspired by Byron Katie. Yeah.
And it is quite amazing the stories that we tend to spin up.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is also a practice of Stoicism, is to be able to separate your judgment of something from the thing itself.
Yes.
Because so much of our emotional reaction to something has to do with the judgment and not actually the thing.
Yeah.
So it's also, I think that's a really fascinating exercise.
It's so helpful
Yeah.
because then if you're using it in your personal life, you can start sort of using the language to be like, hey, babe, when you come in and you don't acknowledge me, I start telling myself a lot of stories. I tell myself, that you're upset with me, that you're offended, whatever,
Yeah.
that we're in a fight. And that creates enough distance that your partner can be like, that's hilarious. I had my AirPods in and I had to go to the bathroom.
Right.
Whatever it is, often it's like not at all connected
all,
to your storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you ever used creativity as a form of healing?
Ooh.
Not that I'm here to reveal your deepest moments of grief.
Give me an example. Have you?
That's a good question.
I mean, I
Hey,
guess I have.
I'm
actually.
the interviewer here.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, I mean, because I think that creativity can be very therapeutic.
Yeah.
For people. I mean, I can't say that it's why I engage in creative activity, but I wonder if it can be therapeutic.
Yeah. I think for me, more creativity, at least in this phase of my life in the last 5-6 years, has been about healing a part of myself that felt like I needed to only create in the shadows.
Yeah.
And this is in the pride chapter of honor best behavior, but that to be seen as dangerous and that I don't want any attention on me or on my work. And so throughout my entire life, I mean, I worked at a magazine that had no bylines. I ghostwrite. I've worked for big brands and founders who I can funnel my work through.
Right.
And that was my MO, was like, I want to put this into the world, but I don't want to walk it onto stage. And so the last 5 years has been a reckoning with that for me, of like, actually, I do want to stand with my work mostly. I still ghostwrite, but
Hmm.
that I think it's been, to your point about building immunity, it's like I can actually stand here and accept attention, and it's not always going to be positive, and I'll survive.
Yeah. Do you like the spotlight?
No, no, I don't
No.
think that I do. I think I'm an introvert. I, and this is like, this is a part of this next evolution for me, as like, I think I keep myself tight, small, like quote unquote relatable, because I'm scared if I get bigger, I will be destroyed. I will be canceled. It's sort of what happens to a lot of women, particular, kind of a story, also often a fact. But that's what I'm reckoning with now, is sort of what I'm doing to go back to Phil Stutz, who told me to be 10% more evil,
Right.
that I have this like, I need to keep this small and not sustaining for me financially or otherwise, in order to like keep myself safe. And his point was like, no, that's your part X, and you need to go out and flex and name drop. What did he tell me? Lie, name drop, brag. I don't know. It's funny,
Yeah.
but it's like very Phil Stutz,
Right.
to put
Well-
myself out there more on behalf of my work.
And would you consider all of those things masculine qualities?
Not
No
exclusively. No, not exclusively.
But I mean, it seems like chest thumping,
Yeah.
swashbuckling, shooting from the hip, name dropping.
It's much more broadcastery typically.
Totally.
And the women who are very in their masculine, I would say, are also quite good at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a masculine principle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it seems to be sort of self or kind of reinforcing among kind of the broadcast set.
Yes.
Well, they will come and sort of swashbuckle on each other's
Yes.
platforms.
I call it the grand circle jerk. Yes.
Okay, good. So,
Sorry.
yeah, you can say that maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, but and you know, and they can go nameless. I mean, we sort of know who they are, but they seem to have no issues propping each other up and using their own platforms to prop each other
Yes.
up, which is that whole phenomenon seems more endemic to that
Yeah.
bro science broadcaster set than the
Women. So this, I wrote I don't know how long ago, maybe 2 years ago, I wrote a podcast series on this that went, I mean, like, I'll use viral, like in a very loose quotation. And it's funny, I was originally going to write an op-ed for a big newspaper based on this series. And then like the editor's editor was like, we don't want to criticize the media. This is all well before the election.
Yeah.
And after, they were like, that's a regret. We should have run this piece, because amongst the set, they also don't really interview any women. The stats are stunning. It's like 11%, or even lower sometimes. And women are big listeners of these podcasts, because we tend to see men as experts and leaders and authorities, and we're not conscious of the fact that this is happening. And so anyway, so I wrote this series, and I was like, these guys, what happens with women, and the reason that you don't see women doing it, in a way I like it about women, but it is, women feel so much scarcity in our lives, so much. Like there's usually, like maybe there's room for one woman on the executive team, or maybe there's two, but we see each other as competition. And if she has something, and this goes to envy in the book, but if she has it, then I can't have it too. And so I need to dethrone her in order to have that opportunity. And so we are not good at naturally collaborating without feeling like something will be taken from us. It's just part of our programming. And so I think amongst women, and Liz Moody and a bunch of women and I are now on a WhatsApp chain trying to change this and support each other. And because these men are not governed by scarcity, And they don't have this psychology of, if I have her on, I might lose some of my listenership to her. They'll go to her instead of me.
Right.
And so they are circle jerking and supporting each other at every turn and just growing more and more and more prominent and dominant. It is not inhibiting their growth at all to support each other. On the contrary.
Right.
And so I think it's a really good example of the way that scarcity limits women and doesn't limit men. And that as women, again, as much as I love that we're not so overtly transactional, it's like we gotta resolve this in ourselves and support each other from a place of like, there's plenty and there's more than enough. And if you get more, maybe I'll get more too, not the opposite, which is a big, big ruler in our lives.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're witnessing that phenomenon. It's actually inspired us to actually start a women's health podcast network.
Oh, amazing.
Based on that very idea that you just articulated.
Yeah.
We're like at the very beginning of it. But in conversations I've had with people, especially like female doctors that have strong podcasts or whatever, but they feel like they're just on islands, really. And every time I kind of mention this idea of like, okay, we're bigger than the sum of our parts, like strength in numbers, out of many one, these kinds of concepts, it feels so resonant that there's a need there.
Yeah, it's definitely a need, but it goes against our programming. It really does. And I think understanding that psychology is important.
Yeah. So interesting. So what's coming up?
What am I doing?
What's coming up?
Well, this workbook, Choosing Wholeness Over Goodness, which is a very Jungian title, is coming out at the end of August. And I actually think it's a kind of an amazing piece of work. And I think I can say that with distance because I set the cultural context for each chapter, and then Courtney coaches it. And she's an incredible coach. And so I think it's and I've done this experience. Oh, to your point, when you were asking about in real life, we've done this with women, and it's very powerful. It's really moving actually to see people start to come aware of what they're up to. So that's coming.
Will you live workshop that?
Yeah, we're gonna do. We figured out sort of like a shorter event, which is where we just do fact versus story with people and put them in dyads, and they go at it. And it's just amazing, one, what comes up and how intimate it is immediately. And also when you do that process, the person who is asking the question, tell me a fact about yourself, now tell me a story about that fact, they're only allowed to say thank you. And that's also very interesting for people because you cannot fix, you cannot console, you cannot coach, you cannot confirm. And that's excruciating, which is a whole nother fascinating part of it. So we'll be doing events and retreats. We need support. Like we're both all over the place. And so it's hard to sit and be like, okay, what does this look like? Maybe you can help us. And so that's coming. And then I'm writing my next book, which is about shadow and polarity and binaries. And I'm terrible at pitching it. And then just podcasting and writing and ghostwriting. And I don't know, it's nutty.
It's full.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because I have a past of doing too many things, of going.
I don't know what that's like.
Well, just in response to the description of your own life, I have a penchant of going like a mile wide and an inch deep,
Yes.
And then
I don't know what that's like.
Yeah, and then I'll retreat. And I'll be like, Jeff, essentialism, you have to focus,
yes,
right?
Greg
do
McEwen.
whatever, do less. And, but I think my instinct, because I'm just interested in a lot of things, and I think you are too, right?
There's a lot of compelling stuff out there.
So much compelling stuff. Even though for the course of a day, I'll find myself vacillating between like James Nestor's breath and then like, moral fundamentalism versus relativism. And then I'll kind of like spin off into like, what's the name of that plant? Like, that's kind of like the course of a day. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, did I get anywhere? So I know what that's like, but I think that's what makes life interesting, to be curious.
Yeah, and I think it's such a privilege, right?
Yes.
I mean, I love being able to follow my curiosity and that people are willing to go along on that ride. It's kind of an amazing privilege. I think it's really fun. I've worked hard to create this, but and I wouldn't do anything differently. Although I counted, I have 8 jobs, and I could I do boards, I do consult. It's a little
The 8 deadly jobs.
the 8 deadly jobs. Yeah, and I think partly I do that as like a defense against getting like too big or being successful. It's like just build like 8 little mountains that add up to a viable career. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to circle back
I know
around.
you're not my therapist, but I feel like for however long we're talking, I'm like, can you?
We're sort of in a therapy environment here.
A therapeutic.
Well, send me the 8 jobs. I guarantee that I can parse it down to 5. That's all I can guarantee.
Oh my God.
All right, Elise, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can do this more often. This is really
so fun.
A lot of fun. All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll love this one too.